The following audio was originally recorded live and broadcast to the facilities of Trent Radio on January 8th, 2020.
I'm Justin Evangelo. This is Disenabled, the show where we enable people with physical disabilities. So happy to be back behind the mic. It is my one sane spot in a university world full of chaos and craziness. Today, I am so fortunate to have a terrific guest with me today. She has been recording radio as far back as reel-to-reel tape in the 1970s on Ryerson Radio. Everybody, please welcome Devon Wilkins. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to come and have a conversation with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
So today I wanted to focus on, because you are fully blind, I wanted to focus on today, I haven't even sent you these questions. This is spontaneous as it gets. So today I wanted to talk about guide dog versus cane use. Now, to give people some context, let's talk about you for a sec. Give us a brief sort of summary of your life, where you grew up, where you've come from as a person.
Okay, well, I'm originally from the eastern townships of Quebec, but our family wasn't French or Catholic either. And my dad had an 86-acre farm. And I'm the youngest of 9. Went to school I went to a school for the blind in Montreal, and then in Brantford. And I've done work in medical transcription and massage and hydrotherapy, and finally radio.
Terrific. At any point, were you ever a cane user? This is something I actually don't know about you. Were you at all? Did you ever use the cane?
Yes, I did.
When did you start?
I started in high school. I think it might have been a good idea for us to start earlier in life, because by the time high school comes along, you already have developed inhibitions and that sort of thing. So it might have been better as far as confidence building if we had started earlier, but I was probably 16-ish.
So how did that come about? What was the experience like? How did the cane first get introduced into your life?
I had a cane because I traveled from especially when I was traveling in Quebec. I was on the train myself, so I had a cane, but I didn't ever really know how to use it properly. And then when I was about 16, the school introduced mobility lessons, and I remember walking down the center walk of the school in Brantford toward Brant Avenue, and having to learn how to cross streets and listen to the direction of traffic and that sort of thing, and never feeling terribly confident.
So when you did finally hone your cane skills, there obviously was a boost of confidence for you because of the independence it allowed you to have.
Yes. Yeah. But I was never a really confident cane traveler.
Okay. Because of the fact that may have something to do with the fact you started late, as you said before, and typically you want to start, at least with the cane, as soon as you can hold it, basically, and wield it and learn that it's not a weapon.
Right.
before then, how did you get around? Did you rely a lot on sighted guide? Because up
Yes.
until the age of 16, that's quite a lull in between being able to use something proficiently and not having it at all, not knowing how to use it, right?
Yes, yeah. A sighted guide. Most of the time, I remember walking to church, back and forth to church in school, and quite often the people that I walked with, didn't have any more sight than I did. So, but we were in a fairly tight line, so you couldn't go too far away, too far afield.
Mm-hmm.
But I always remember when I got my cane, I decided I was going to call it Thelma. You know how people name things. And the reason I called it Thelma was my mother's name was Thelma, and she wasn't a particularly good guide. And for example, she wouldn't tell me when there was a curb, and I quite often found myself, as I said in a poem one time, paying respects to the ground on all fours. So when I got my cane, and quite often it let me down, as far as probably more because of my lack of skill than because of the cane itself. But anyway, I quite often found myself paying respects to the ground on all fours. So I called it Thelma.
Okay, straying away from Thelma then, what made you switch to a guide dog, and how old were you when you made the switch?
I was, once again, later than most people. I had wanted to much earlier, but my family kind of discouraged me. And then when I moved to Collingwood, and I was with a mobility instructor, she said to me, "I'll have to see about getting you a puppy." And I just about fell over because I thought you had to be a really, really competent and confident cane traveler to have a guide dog. And the idea of having a dog beside me, as opposed to a very non-responsive cane, sounded like a really appealing idea. So I went to Canadian Guide Dogs for the Blind and had a 2-day assessment, and decided that I wanted to go ahead with getting a dog. And for my 42nd birthday, I got my first dog named Sally.
Wow.
She was a golden retriever.
Well, you now have a golden lab that's laying right at our feet right now. Frankie, he's your 5th dog, do I remember correctly?
My 4th.
4th dog.
And he's a yellow lab.
Yellow
Yeah.
lab, okay.
Mhm.
Golden yellow, close enough.
Well, golden retrievers have a longer fur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's usually fluffier too.
Yeah.
Frankie's nice and coarse.
Yeah.
What kind of training was involved, and how long was it to get Sally in the first place?
You have to be there for about a month at the school, and they do a lot of, not my school, but there are schools that do a lot of home training now. But the school that I went to, which is in Manotick, just south of Ottawa, likes you to really concentrate on being with the dog and building a relationship and a bond with the dog, and kind of putting everything else in your life on the side. So that's one of the reasons why I think they want to have you where they are instead of having to bring the dog to you.
Right, because it would make sense. The dog's much more familiar where it's been brought up and trained in a more comfortable environment, and then when it goes off with you, you're its stable source of comfort and companionship. So if everything goes according to plan, I imagine, then the thought is the two of you, the dog and you, will click up and be lifelong friends.
Yeah, that's right.
So when you go through the training, do you have to go through it for every dog you have? This is a misconception behind a lot of behind a lot of people who have dogs. Some say yes, you have to go through the retraining. Some say no. Have you had to?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
And the reason, their reasoning is, the school's reasoning, is that just like drivers, we guide dog users can develop bad habits during the years that we have spent with a certain dog. And not all dogs are the same. You know, dogs, as opposed to cars, dogs have their own personalities and that sort of thing. So they like you to try, when you go to train with a dog, to clear the slate, so to speak, and give the trainer and the dog the chance to teach you information that you need to know about that dog. And so that's what they like you to do at Canadian Guide Dogs.
Okay. Makes sense. Seems quite logical, too. They want you walking away with the best experience possible, obviously.
Yeah.
Does it cost anything? This is another high-tension sort of thing, and I've heard mixed reviews on this. When you go to try to get a guide dog and be certified to have one, does it cost the owner of the soon-to-be owner of the dog anything?
It all depends on what school you go to. In most situations, no, it does not cost anything.
Okay.
The Seeing Eye, which is in Morristown, New Jersey, and everybody calls guide dogs Seeing Eye dogs, but that's like calling tissues Kleenex.
Yeah.
And it's just more or less a brand name. I think they charge $150 for the first dog, and then $50 for every successor dog.
Okay.
After that, but Canadian Guide Dogs, for example, and Leader and different schools like that, they don't charge anything. Canadian Guide Dogs does, because it's a legal agreement that you sign as far as the care of the dog and that sort of thing, they want you to give them $1.
Just a small little pittance. Yeah. Okay, so it does vary, and it seems like in the States it tends to be a little bit more expensive, as you mentioned. Having the dog versus having the cane, how have people reacted publicly? Usually, what I mean by this, and I don't want to steer your answer in any way, but what I'm trying to drive at is usually people pay much more attention to the dog because it's a better conversation point, because it's more approachable than a painted stick with a grip on it.
Yeah, that's right.
So in your experience, have people been much more receptive to the dog than the cane, or has it been equal? What's that been like for you?
Yeah, definitely people are more receptive to the dog. It's funny, if they can talk to the dog and then leave it, that's fine, but it's not so handy sometimes when you want to go in the car with somebody. Then they're not necessarily as receptive, but because of the hair and that sort of stuff, and so you need, as a handler, you need to try to keep your dog as clean as possible. But certainly, a dog is much more of a conversation starter than a cane. And on long bus trips, like I tend to take to go and see family. Mm-hmm. The dog is definitely much more companionable, and you can at least talk to the dog. Whereas if you talk to your cane, well, you might get some strange looks.
That's great. And a lot of the time, first, I'm going to actually segue this by asking a question, and you've partially answered it already. You said your family discouraged you from sort of getting a dog. What was their thinking behind the discouragement?
I think partially because of the hair. I think Also, not everybody likes dogs. And other than that, I'm not sure why, because I'm not living with any of my family, so they don't have to worry about taking the dog out and that sort of thing. And finally, I said, unless you're going to be there to cross the street with me anytime I want to go, I don't think you have any say. So,
Wow, good on you.
yeah.
That's great advocacy. The reason I ask is because I hear a lot of people, a lot of cane users who are thinking about switching to a dog, and they say, my family's pressuring me. It seems to be the opposite situation because of the factors that I just mentioned, that they're not only seeing the people, whether it be parents or friends or extended family, who want the person with the sight impairment to get the dog, are saying, well, it's not only a guide dog, it's a great protector. And what do you think about being pressured to get a dog versus a cane because of, let's just say it's better, which I don't think is the case at all. I think it's a case-by-case basis. But what's your stance on cane and making the switch to a dog? How would a person know they're ready to make that jump if they needed to?
If they like dogs, if they don't mind going out in 30-degree below weather to take the dog out, if they feel that they can afford the dog food and vet expenses. Some schools cover one or both, but not all. If there are added responsibilities with a dog, which you don't have with a cane, and there's the companionship. If you like all of those possibilities, then you're ready for a dog. But I don't think that anybody should feel pressured by anybody else to go one way or the other. It's definitely a personal choice, and ultimately you're the one that's going to have to make the choice and live with the choice that you make. So I don't think that anybody should try to pressure you one way or the other.
A lot of the pressure, too, I think, comes from the fact that the lot of people I've spoken to are very experienced cane users, about up to my level or even better, because they travel so much on foot, and their parents are thinking, well, or their extended family or whoever's telling them to get the dog are thinking, well, you're out on you're up and out on your feet a lot. You might want to get something a little bit more protective than the cane. You know what I mean? The hearts are in the right place, but I think it's for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
The dog shouldn't be the next step, or there isn't sort of a threshold, because as much as they are a service, they're supposed to serve you. Like you said before, the relationship has to be reciprocated.
Yes,
you have to
right.
care for it as well. Now, because we're running not super tight for time, but a little bit, I wanted to briefly touch on the misconceptions, just real quick, about when you cannot pet a service dog.
Okay.
So give us, if you can, a little bit of a rundown, because some people say you can pet them indoors but not outdoors. If they're wearing the harness, you can't pet them at all. What is the ground rule? I know it's person, case by case, person by person, but what do you prefer?
What I do is it's much better if you ask first. Then that clears the way. So if you see someone with a guide or a service dog, instead of assuming that you can or that you can't pet the dog, just say, can I say hi to your dog? And if, for example, I'm out on the street, I'm probably going to say, no, not now. But if I'm sitting down and doing nothing, I'm probably going to say, yeah, you can say hi. The other thing, too, is if I'm at a counter, for example, and I'm busy trying to find change, or I'm fumbling in my purse for something, I'm going to say no, because I don't want the dog to pull my arm away from what I'm doing. I
Right.
need my two hands. Yeah. So, and there's one more thing I wanted to say, Justin, before we do run out of time.
Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes still, but
Okay.
go ahead.
The dog is in no way, no how, trained to protect you. It might instinctively if something were to happen, but learning how to protect its handler is not what being a guide dog is all about.
Well, there you go. You're straight from the horse's mouth. Now,
or the dogs.
You mean when an attack? Like, here's another misconception that just came to mind as well. They are trained to keep you safe when you're crossing roads or train tracks or what have you, any sort of intersection where a vehicle is moving.
Yeah.
They're trained to protect you there. So if you were to go and the dog says no, will it act in that sense? Will it usually do something?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
If quite often, if a danger of that kind is staring you in the face, so to speak, the dog will either step in front of you or shove you out of the way, or whatever. But if when I was talking about protecting, if somebody were to approach you and start attacking you in any way, most dogs might protect you out of instinct, though.
Right.
Not because they're a guide dog.
Right. It's just instinctive to protect their master, their owner, whatever you want to say. But again, you're just trying to stress that they are not specially trained to attack. They're not they're not like a German Shepherd military dog, attack dog. No, they don't receive any training whatsoever like that.
That's right.
Okay, coming to the ultimate question then, which is better? And I think you've partially answered this, but you said it's case by case, but I'll ask anyway. Which is better, cane or guide dog?
If you were to ask me, I would say a guide dog, but that's just for me. I can't answer for you or anybody else. You know what you feel confident and competent with. And so it's definitely a personal choice, and no one should condemn anybody for what they use as a mobility aid or where they get the dog if they choose to have a dog.
Words of great advice. Do you have any last remarks on the subject before we sign off here, Devon?
No. Well, yes. Maybe.
Okay.
If you see someone with a disability of any kind and you feel like you should be helping, then the best thing to do is to say, "Hi, can I help you?" or "Do you need any assistance?" And if the person says yes, then they'll probably tell you what kind of assistance they need. And if they say no, don't be offended. Just be glad that they're being independent.
Well, there you go. I've hammered that point home so many times throughout the show, and there you go again. It shows up, and this is the 11th episode. So thank you so much. Devon Wilkins, everybody. Great to have you on today. This was a terrific conversation, and you did, I hope you cleared up some misconceptions about the Mystic Guide Dog. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Just a small taste of guide dog themed content, more to come in the future. Let me know what you thought about it. Any criticisms or comments you want to send my way would be much appreciated. And if you yourself have a disability and want to see about getting on the podcast, be appreciated as well. Hit me up at disenabled.podcast@gmail.com. I also want to mention, before I forget, that Devon has her own radio show turned podcast called Insight Peterborough. More disability-based content for you if you feel so inclined to check it out. I've linked the podcast and Trent Radio's broadcast schedule where you can listen to the show live, what a novelty that is, down below. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, share it with a friend or two or 25. The more the merrier. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, rate and review it. And as always, folks, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, cheers.